The world of frame rate conversions. In my world, in the video industry, I'm always dealing with 2398 masters, shows that have been shot and edited at 2398. But the broadcaster here in North America, they want 2997 interlaced shows to be delivered to them. How do you do that conversion? We're going to look at that today inside of Avid and Resolve. We're also going to look at drop frame versus non-drop timecode. This is something that happens mostly in North America that every broadcaster wants, but not every editor knows about. A lot of them don't know it even exists. To start out, we're going to assume we've already mastered our show to 2398. Now we're going to go into Avid and we're going to create a new project. We're going to call it Convert to Broadcast, and we're going to set the project settings to be 5994 interlaced, not 2997p, as you will see here. The broadcasters in North America want interlaced shows, so 5994 interlaced is how we achieve that. From there, you'll be surprised how easy this is. I have linked to a source file, which is a 2398 episode, previous episode that we have done on tracking. You can see right here, this is 2398 1080p, but our project is 1080i 5994. So when we make a new sequence in Avid, we're going to get a 1080i 5994 sequence. We will name the sequence 4-point tracker converted. And we're simply going to take our source file and we're going to cut it into that timeline. And Avid is automatically going to do the conversion. And we're going to see very quickly that the audio. So how do we use that glare to our advantage? We have another situation where 3 of our 4 trackers actually leave the frame. Is in sync at the beginning, and it is in sync at the end. Try to respond to everybody. I told you it was easy. A 2398 master inside a 2997 timeline will remain in sync. You don't need to convert the audio, and the video conversion that happens on that timeline automatically is just fine for an interlaced broadcast. There is, however, one gotcha. In North America, the broadcasters want drop frame timecode. So your timeline has to be timed to a drop frame count. Not full frame, but drop frame. And a lot of people don't know this. So how do you take care of that? Well, in Avid, super easy. So just to better understand drop frame, how to achieve a drop frame timeline in Avid, I've loaded up, here we are back in our Convert to Broadcast project. We have our project, which is 5994 with a 2398 clip in it. And if I just go to the end of this clip, we can see down here, this clip is, the duration of the timeline is 27:48:27. But if you look really closely in our master time code, we are looking at colons in between each number, which indicates to us this is a full frame or a non-drop frame timeline. Call up a different setting here, different layout. If we want to change this to a drop frame timeline, we're going to go into our record monitor, we're going to right click, and we're going to call up the sequence report. In Avid, this is where you can change your starting time code for your timeline. There's other things in here. Honestly, I don't even know if I've ever used any of them. This is the main one we're looking at right now. And again, it's 1:00:00. We simply take and change this to a semicolon, apply those changes, and we are now in a drop frame timeline. And again, back here we can see in our master time code and in our duration, we are showing semicolons indicating we're in a drop frame timeline. Now, if you'll notice, if you remember, our duration has changed. So we're at 275017. I'm going to go back, change this back to a full frame timeline. And we're at 274827. So we're about 2.5 seconds difference. And that's where you have to be very careful. You have to deliver, if you have to deliver a drop frame timeline, you have to make sure your timing of that timeline, the final length, is correct. Nothing has changed in our timeline, but the calculated time of our timeline has changed. It's simply a calculation. Drop frame is going to drop, I don't know if it's like 1 or 1.8 frames every minute of video. It's 108 frames every hour anyway. It doesn't actually drop the frames. What it does is it just doesn't count those frames. I'll tell you how it was explained to me many years ago. We were dealing with tape decks back then, but it's the same idea. If you had a tape in full frame that started at 00000000 and your hand was hovering over the play button, and you had a stopwatch in the other hand, and you were able to perfectly sync the play and the start of that stopwatch at the exact same time, and you were to let that show run through for its full 45-minute duration, and you were able to hit stop on both at the exact same time, you would notice something very funny. Those times wouldn't match up. The counter on the machine would read a different length than the counter on your stopwatch. But if we change that tape to a drop frame time code, and we did the same process, the two would match up. We drop frames in North America in math or in the counter simply to keep the time the same as a wall clock. It's got nothing to do with actually dropping frames. It's just not counting frames. So as an editor, you have to make sure you are timing your show to a drop frame timecode. And the broadcasters will usually say in their specs, drop frame timing. Some will actually accept a 2398 master, but they will specify that you have to have timed it to 2997 drop frame for their purposes. So how does an editor make sure that they've done this? Because if they don't, they will find out very quickly that their 1 hour show is probably about 2 seconds long. Let's look in Avid and see how we can fix this or make sure we have it set correctly. We are in a 2398 project. We can call up our sequence, and then along this timecode window, we have all sorts of options for different time sets we can use. So we can look at this in a 30 drop frame timecode. So if we were trying to hit 274822, and I'm going to simplify this for myself right now, I would need to make this 274800. So I can go on my 30 drop frame, find 274800, and you can see that we are counting in full 30 frame increments here. We're no longer counting in 2398 or 24 increments. This is where this show needs to end. So I need to remove (2 seconds and 14 frames from my show to make it time out to 274800. So that's doing the conversions and making sure we have drop frame timecode in Avid. What about if you want to work in Resolve? It's a little bit different. Let's show you how to do it. So let's take a look at how we do this in Resolve. We are in Resolve. We are in a 2398 timeline. And you're going to say, but we don't want to output 2398. We want to output 5994 or 2997. That is one of the differences between Avid and Resolve. It's a little easier in Resolve to mix and match your frame rates within a project. So here is our 2398 master, and we want to make a new timeline from this. We'll call this convert to broadcast. But we're not going to use the project settings because the project settings are 2398. We want to make our own settings. And first and foremost, we don't want 2398. Broadcaster's asking for 2997, so let's give him 2997. Broadcaster's asking for, we know it's going to have to be drop frame, so we're going to select that now. If we don't select that now in Resolve, I don't think you can select this after the fact. Avid, you can flip-flop back and forth between a drop frame and non-drop frame timeline. Resolve, I'm pretty sure you have to set this up before you build your timeline. And of course, we want this to be interlaced. And you'll notice in Resolve, once we hit interlaced, watch what happens to the 2997. It becomes 5994. And from there, again, that's really all there is to it. We have a drop frame timeline. Resolve only has a single semicolon to identify that, but it's there. So there might be a little bit of delay in the screen recording, but it is in sync on my box. Situation where 3 of our 4 trackers actually leave the frame. How do we adjust for that? And our audio is in sync at the beginning, and it is in sync at the end. Behind that clock. There you go. 4-point tracker. Old school is still pretty good. As always, please like, subscribe, and leave comments below. I try to respond to everybody. And that's how you do it in Resolve. Go over to your delivery page, and you've got the option now for 5994 output, and you should be good to go. So that's it. 2398 to broadcast is pretty easy, no matter where you want to try to do it. But what if you've got a more difficult conversion? What if you need to go from 2398 to PAL, 25? What if you need to go from 24 to 25? Or 24 to 2398, or 25 to 2997? Or the possibilities are endless. And we're going to look at those conversions in our next episode. Until then, please like and subscribe. And please leave comments below. I love to hear from everybody, and I do try to respond to every comment I get. Thanks for watching.